Well, did Project Veritas just confirm what we've suspected all along, that Pfizer has plans to, or had plans to, manipulate the COVID-19 virus in order to continue profiting off of vaccines for years to come? Well, so some context here. Project Veritas just released what looks like a stunning admission from Pfizer's own director of research and development, a guy by the name of Jordan Tristan Walker. Take a look at this.
Pfizer ultimately is thinking about mutating COVID?
Well, that is not what we say to the public. No. Don't tell anyone this, Malone. You probably shouldn't tell anyone. You probably shouldn't tell anyone. Okay? We're exploring, like, now, you know how the virus keeps mutating?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things we're exploring is, like, why don't we just mutate it ourselves so we could preemptively develop new vaccines, right? So we have to do that. If we're going to do that, though, there's a risk of, like, as you could imagine, no one wants to be having a pharma company mutating viruses. You have to be, like, very controlled to make sure that this virus that you mutate doesn't create something that, like, you know, goes everywhere.
Something crazy.
I suspect is the way that the virus started and moving on. To be honest, like, it makes no sense if this virus popped out of nowhere. And, like,
yeah, I know.
Meet Jordan Tristan Walker, a director of research and development strategic operations and mRNA scientific planning at Pfizer.
it sounds like gain of function to me. I don't know, it's a little bit different. I think it's different. It's like it's definitely not gain of function.
It sounds like it is. I mean, it's okay.
No, directed evolution is very different. Well, you're not supposed to do gain of function research with the viruses. Like,
Yeah.
They recommend not. But you do, like, these, like, selected directional mutations to try to see if you can make more potent.
Yeah.
So there is research ongoing about that. I don't know how that's going to work. There better not be any more outbreaks, because, like, Jesus Christ.
Separately, Project Veritas provided Pfizer evidence that shows Jordan is who he says he is. They provided internal org chart documents showing Walker working in that role at the company, among other things, papers published. The Pfizer executive told about his company's plan for COVID vaccines while acknowledging that people would not like this information if it went public. Dr. Robert Malone is internationally recognized scientist, physician, and the original inventor of the mRNA vaccination as a technology. So he knows something about this. He was up late last night on a Twitter space talking all about this. Dr. Malone joins us now. Thanks for getting up early with us, wherever you happen to be in the world, to talk about this, Doctor. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks very much. The location at the moment is here on the farm. This is my farm studio. Looks somewhat like yours, here in Madison, Virginia, at the foothills of the Shenandoah National Park in the USA.
Well, absolutely beautiful. So thank you so much for joining us on this. I want to get into the specifics of this manipulation of the virus in a second. But before we get into the specifics, what was your initial reaction to just seeing this video and hearing this bombshell report from Project Veritas?
So I had just come back from speaking with a group in Stockholm and landed at Dulles Airport about 10 o'clock the night before. And in the early afternoon, late morning, I got pinged by Veritas asking if I would be interested in providing some comment to a drop that they had, some new expose. And they sent me a link to the embargoed video. And as I watched this, my reaction was shock. I cannot express how profoundly this impacted on me. I've been touring the world talking about the information, the government lies, and the tragedy of the vaccine injured and dead, and the gaslighting that's gone on. And then this thing drops with this gentleman casually, humorously, with absolutely no sign of empathy, describing these activities that have compounded one of the greatest human tragedies in modern history. And he has absolutely no remorse, seems to have absolutely no self-awareness. And I'm watching this. I've worked for larger pharma. I've worked for Bill and Melinda Gates companies. I've worked for the government. I'm familiar with some of the perverse nature of this culture and community, the sense of entitlement, et cetera. But this was all wrapped up in a package. The sense of entitlement, the hubris, it was all there in this amazing video clip of what appears to be a somewhat inebriated gentleman. I think we need to give him the benefit of the doubt that he probably was not fully sober. That certainly appears to be the case. So I think some latitude, but still, this joking acknowledgement of Pfizer having captured the entire regulatory apparatus in the United States and really globally, the willingness to just speak blithely about gain-of-function research and substitute different language for it,
Right.
directed evolution.
Well, I want to get into that piece.
I just was stunned. Yeah.
Yeah. So that piece of this, there's the gain of function piece, right? So he sort of swaps that out in this and says, it's not, well, he says you're not supposed to do gain of function research with viruses. He admits on camera, and he says regularly that you're not supposed to, but we can do this sort of selected structure mutations to make these viruses more potent. So as he describes it, as directed evolution. So can you unpack that? What exactly does that mean that Pfizer was actively working on?
So to my eyes and ears, this is tomato, tomato. This is a euphemism. This is substitution of one word for another word that's prohibited language. This corruption of our language has been a characteristic all the way through this. It's intensely Orwellian, as I'm sure you know. In terms of the technicality, what he appears to be describing is very akin to what appeared to have been the limited hangout that was employed by Anthony Fauci when questioned on the Hill. The logic appears to be this splitting of hairs, that if one is engineering in an entirely new property, such as, for instance, a furin cleavage site, into a virus, then that would be gain of function. Or notoriously, when I was a younger faculty member at UC Davis, there was a professor who was trying to engineer a more pathogenic simian AIDS virus, and made recombinations between simian AIDS and human AIDS. And then, because that wasn't sufficiently pathogenic, started inserting human cytokines. That's clearly gain of function. By the way, this is an integral part of this culture. These folks often believe that they're entitled to do this type of work because they're the best and brightest. So what appears to be the parsing here is that the thesis that if one does targeted mutations or serial passage is where you infect one animal or one plate of cells and then take the product of that and infect another and infect another. This is more classical genetics that can be done. This is, akin to growing peas, Mendel's experiments. But in this case, serial passage it's being described as in monkeys, probably African greens. And that's also casually described, almost jokingly. This is what we do, haha. So that appears to be, basically all of this appears to be almost identical to what is believed to have been done at the Wuhan Institute of Virology in the origins of the laboratory strain that we call SARS-CoV-2. But in the case of the Wuhan Institute, they were using humanized mice. And in this case, apparently Pfizer is doing serial passage in African green macaques, I infer, because they're susceptible. So that the idea, the parsing here is that, well, we're not actually swapping in a whole new function. We're just mutating and modifying an existing genetic backbone. The immunologic logic that the gentleman advances is gibberish. It is nonsensical. It is grossly naive, the idea that a single epitope is what's responsible for these major changes in phenotype, like Omicron and Delta. I'm using technical terms, but what I'm trying to express is that the the thesis seems to be that if we do either classical genetics or targeted genetics to modify an existing backbone, that's okay to cause that viral backbone genome to have new properties. That's okay. But inserting some new property, they're parsing that as saying, well, that's what is prohibited legally. Now, let's remember that Pfizer can do this anywhere in the world. And remember, they have a particularly tight relationship with the Israeli government. And Israel has never signed the biowarfare treaty. In Israel, it's free for all. There are no boundaries in terms of this kind of genetic modification research. Have I made it helped you understand it?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And to think then that this was, what was the collaboration? Do you get a sense of maybe what the collaboration was between what was happening then at the Wuhan Institute and Pfizer? This idea that this was being manipulated.
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm really glad you brought that up. Kim.com I don't wish to diss Mr. .com. That's not my objective here. But he concluded from this presentation and this discussion that Pfizer was likely to have been somehow complicit in what happened in Wuhan, and appears to be engaging in a business model in which they would intentionally release a virus. That was what I think I heard him asserting. And I just want to take a moment and distance myself from that. One of the ways I've kept out of trouble through all of this, and despite what the fact checkers say, I think I've pretty well called it correctly all the way through, is I've refused to make those kinds of leaps, inferential leaps and speculations. So at this point, I think what's safe to say, and as a journalist, I'm sure you'll appreciate this, what we know is that this senior executive at Pfizer is asserting that there is both forward-looking plans being actively discussed, and then in other sections of the video, he appears to use the present and past tense, indicating that some of this work is in progress or has been in progress. He refers to the cash cow aspect of this, that it is an ideal business model to be creating pathogens and their countermeasures. But we don't have any smoking gun demonstrating that Pfizer as a corporation has directly been involved either in the Wuhan lab work or in releasing intentionally or inadvertently any of these agents that they're working on. So I think we got to be, to be responsible.
Right.
It's important that we note that, and that in no way says that they didn't do it. But right now we have no evidence other than the words from this gentleman.
Now, we might get some evidence when it comes to Congress. Congress now, the House of Representatives is now going to be pushing forward with congressional testimony, Dr. Fauci among them. Do you think that this should be part of that congressional hearings, that Pfizer should be called to answer these questions around this manipulation?
So you ask what I think. Obviously, I feel strongly that there needs to be very aggressive investigations of the multiple agencies that have touched on this, the contracts that were issued, the bypassing of regulatory norms, and of course the activities of the contractors and subcontractors that have serviced those government contracts. Such-a-lot Latipova makes a case that the fraud here was intentional on the part of the government, and the pharmaceutical industry delivered the fraud that the government purchased. Unpack that statement. That's consistent with the contracts. Okay, but we absolutely have to get to this. Unfortunately, Ron Johnson in the Senate is not sanguine about the ability to hold anybody accountable in D.C. The major players are very sophisticated in avoiding accountability, And I know that Matt Getz and his aide last night were making very strong statements about insisting on investigations and notifying the DOJ about this. But that being the Department of Justice, DC acronyms. I personally believe that it is unlikely that the American government, the American people and the world will be able to place much confidence in anything emerging out of Congress as it exists right now, and hence why I'm cautiously optimistic. Maybe I should curb that enthusiasm about the grand jury activity that is planned in the state of Florida. I do believe strongly that we need some independent, large government entity that's autonomous from the federal government, that's to be empowered to really open the books on this. In whether Governor DeSantis is the right person, I don't know that there is a perfect person here, but I'm not optimistic that we're going to get to the bottom of anything in either the House or the Senate, given the way things are.
Yeah, Congress has very limited power in that regard, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately. Maybe in the longer run about how we know that government tends to overreach. So, but nevertheless, hopefully get some answers on this. I want to ask you, is this just the tip of the iceberg? Others are saying, well, we're being distracted from just Pfizer here.
Yes.
We need to be looking at Moderna. We need to be looking at the World Health Organization involved in this. And so the Pfizer piece of this just a small fraction, just the tip of the iceberg?
So I'm going to speculate. So I'm placing a placeholder. This is not proven. This is speculation on my part.
This is Dr. Robert Malone speculating right now. Okay. Well, let's listen.
Yeah. Fact checkers, stay away. Fact checkers be gone. It's my sense that Pfizer has been a major driver in what appear to me to be broad-based corrupt actions across all Western governments. The harmonization of the propaganda and censorship and other initiatives, the contracts that were executed in the European Parliament and across the world with governments. My intuition is that we have very active collusion, in particular between Pfizer and the Five Eyes intelligence community. Five Eyes being Great Britain, U.S., Canada, New Zealand, and Australia, which appear to have been the most egregious in the authoritarian practices that have been deployed, and obviously are tied together. There are all kinds of breadcrumbs having to do with that. That said, Moderna is a product of the CIA. Moderna was created by DARPA. The new RNA manufacturing plant in Canada was capitalized by In-Q-Tel. That the involvement in the intelligence community here is deep and broad. And my understanding is that the current CEO of Moderna was involved in the design and build out of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. There are deep, deep roots here in a very small, closed community. And it is interlaced between intelligence interests, the interests of various globalist organizations, and of course, we always like to pick on Klaus Schwab and the WEF. But there's also vertical integration up to the World Health Organization, and from there, of course, we have the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. That's, I think, number 2 funder of the WHO now, And then that traces back to the origin of the China solution that is being so actively advocated, the Chinese CCP. I mean, this is a matrix here that is interlaced in a complex, sophisticated way. And I am not optimistic that I think we're going to face a similar situation to those that have tried to disambiguate what happened with the assassination of John F. Kennedy when I was a child. As your friend Tucker Carlson has recently commented on.
Well, I praised him for that. I was texting him the other day and I said, look, like your coverage of this is incredibly important. And to be able to actually shed light on this, and no one in the United States of America or a democratically elected government should be able to sit there and stand by as the deep state, assassinates a president or runs one of the most nefarious vaccine programs to ever hit the world. People rightly are calling this Nuremberg 2.0. Do you agree with that assessment?
Let's see. How do I say about that? The Reiner Fulmick and Nuremberg 2.0 at times appears to be a bit of a media play. I don't know how we get there from here in the current global political environment. I really think that for the layperson, the easiest way to comprehend what we're dealing with is we have an environment in which, as said by the New York Times, the majority of companies in the United States will soon be controlled by BlackRock. We have this small collection of transnational capital that we could call BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, Bank of America, and their colleagues. And they functionally control pretty much all of the major corporations of the world in all of the verticals, corporate media, banking, IT, everything. And all of these entities function more like divisions of one company. It's the easiest way to comprehend what's going on as far as I'm concerned. If you're willing to concede your personal autonomy and sovereignty to these folks that believe that through social Darwinianism, they have the right to rule the world because they're the richest.
Right.
If you're ready to go there, then they have the solution for you, and they will provide it. And if not, this is appears to be one of those last moments in time where if you don't want your children to live in a world where they own nothing, and it's all controlled through some central consortium of banks, and economists, now's the time to get active and speak up, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dr. Robert Malone, we appreciate you joining us here on this Bombshell News. We hope that you won't be a stranger and you'll be back soon. Thank you so much for getting up with us and discussing all of this with us. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure, and thanks for the opportunity. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Robert. We appreciate it. A lot of different opinions on this, right? As some people in the chat are saying, Reiner Fulmick and friends on this Nuremberg 2.0 are taking people to court over this. And I would like to see, I hope that it is bigger and we do get more answers in court. But you see these documents, you see the immunity clauses, you see these contracts that were drawn up essentially by these federal governments, and they get total carte blanche to do whatever they want. And I think we'll see maybe in some of these court cases, if we are able to get more information. We're certainly seeing in New Zealand the fallout from this and what happened with Jacinda Ardern. So I'm hopeful, and people want to know, why is Dr. Fauci not in jail yet? But we might get some answers in Congress when he actually testifies, and that's what.
Well, and I just want to reiterate, how I feel like this is, and people don't have to agree with me, but like if you look at the timeline and when Twitter started supporting free speech and they removed all of the limitations of COVID, and we could start having these conversations about this stuff is starting to fall apart. The narrative is falling apart. Now, the mainstream media is not covering it, but people are sharing it. People are reading it. People are comprehending it and figuring this out. And I feel like, you know, that I do really feel like there is a social revolution happening on Twitter, whether you want to believe that or not. And some of these other, you know, like Rumble that supports free speech. People want the truth, and it's starting to come out. And I think that that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a slight, you know, start of a little bit of a collapse. Now, hopefully, you know, we've never seen this before. Hopefully somebody will go to jail. But even if they don't, as long as it stops moving forward, it's a win.
I hope so. And, you know, for a lot of people, like we have people here watching in New Zealand. Someone says, let's see who says here in New Zealand. Basil Brush on Rumble says, Clayton, it got worse for us in New Zealand, not better. I didn't claim that it got better. I'm just pointing out that Jacinda Ardern leaving, and we'll see. I don't know, you know, and we'll find out here. I think as we start to uncover more of these documents, as we start to see these cushy relationships, the great work of journalists and people at like Project Veritas who are getting answers on all of this. It's not going to be perfect, right? It never is. As we're trying to like get to the heart of all of this, there's going to be messes. My fear in this though is that we don't, when there's mistakes made along the way as people are trying to uncover this, that that there's some leniency for the people that are doing the digging right now, who are going through these documents and are pulling pieces of information out. Go ahead, Philip.
I was just amazed though that like you would think with the current climate and what it's been the past 3 years, like that guy would talk about that to anybody.
Right.
Like the guy from Pfizer, like
couple drinks.
If I had information like that, yeah, I know. It was like I can't imagine getting drunk enough that I would like spill secrets like that in the current climate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That'd be like I don't know, like having footage like that Chelsea Manning had, you know, just release it to somebody at a bar. Oh, check this out! I've got this thing that, you know, nobody's supposed to have. You know, it's like it's just.
And he says right at the beginning, he's like, please don't tell anybody about this. Please don't tell anybody about this. So, you know, there are people questioning, of course, the veracity of this guy. And it's very interesting. If you start to see, you could see it almost happening in real time where the internet has been like scrubbed of this guy. Even the Wayback Machine has been removed of this guy. So there was a intense scrubbing going on of this guy at Pfizer. Those are the deep tentacles of Pfizer and all of this, where you even are able to go back to the Wayback Machine and scrub data of this guy's history.
And that generally, when that happens, that kind of tells you that you're onto something. Like if they're doing that, then they're trying to cover it up.
Well, it's like, it always reminds me of like the old cease and desist letters that people used to get in the tech world. You know, Apple used to do this back in the day when leakers would publish like, oh, this is going to be the new iPhone, or this is going to be the new whatever. And they would publish it on social media, you know, and then Apple would send a cease and desist letter. Well, Apple learned, right? You don't send because then it just proves that it's true. It proves that it's accurate. So if you're going through actively trying to scrub this guy from the internet, pretend he doesn't exist, yeah. Why are they wasting their time on that? Why are they wasting their time? But they had the documents. So thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.